Have to get uncomfortable if you want to grow. So that meant going and talking to people that I would never really approach. He goes, well, to be honest, your thumbnails suck, your titles suck, the video sucks. You're gonna hear strategy from everybody now, how to make a thumbnail, how you should title, everything. Sometimes you just gotta figure out what the platform wants. Some of the most simple things that you know that you have already in here are the most valuable thing to an individual trying to come up. The worst thing to do is to You got Who I Am, right? Let's do that. Who I Am. I'm Ryan Pineda's producer. I just oversee all of his content and all the social media team and everything that happens on the media side. The production that you're seeing today, the productions that you see at WealthCon, all that stuff I kind of manage and handle for him. All right, let's go over some key facts. Number one, there are 5 million podcasts globally and over 70 million episodes between them. It's a lot of podcasts. You feel like you're too late? If you feel like you're too late, you're dead wrong. You're not too late. All right, you can start today, you can start tomorrow, you can start this week and be prepared to compete with every one of those podcasts. All right? It's attention. That's what you need. You need people to sit with you. All right? You need to tell your story. 500 million podcast listeners. You haven't even touched the surface of the amount of people that actually have accessibility to these podcasts. It's still growing. Look what it's projected for 2024. All right? It's still growing. This has been a growing thing for the last 5 to 10 years. All right. All these big podcasts, the Joe Rogans, right? Those podcasts have been going for 15 years before any of us knew what real podcasting was. The reason why that is the case is because he decided early, I want my audience to stay with me. All right. So for all of y'all, how many of y'all just do shorts? Direct to camera. Okay. Quite a few of you. The funny thing about shorts is that you get 30 seconds to impress me. And in fact, you get 3 seconds to make me stay initially. And by this time next year, by January, first quarter, it's going to be even shorter than that. So you're going to start seeing people do crazy things in these edits to try to keep your attention, right? Why only do the 30 second when I can keep me for an hour and a half? You can keep me for 2 hours, right? Anybody, how many real estate? All right. Have any of you ever door knocked before? One of the things I always hear people talk about with door knocking is that my goal is to just keep you at the door for as long as I can. All right. I want to try to sell you. So I'm trying to keep you there. All right. Making my offer. I got a response to everything that you say already dialed in because I'm trying to keep you there. The longer I can talk to you, the better chance I have of converting. It's important because it works the same way with social media. The longer I get you to stay, the longer I have it, the better a chance I have of converting you. So it's really good. 1/3 of the American population listens to podcasts regularly. 1/3. It's a lot of listeners. It's a lot of access. Cost you nothing, really. All right. I actually feel like I'm doing a disservice by not doing it now. All right. Like there's been times where I'm like, man, I'm not really seeing the real benefit to this. So I'm kind of over it, especially sitting down and talking so much. And then Ryan tells me to get on stage and teach. And I'm like, all right, I got to do more talking. And then I got to coach during the week. Right, like these are all things I think about, but it's like, yeah, I'm almost not really servicing my audience if I don't do it. Letting people know the information that I've learned. Some of the most simple things that you know that you have already in here are the most valuable thing to an individual trying to come up. You already have it, right? You've experienced it. You've done it. Your losses, your wins, whatever it is, it's in your head. You already know it. You just got to share it. People can use it. Number one reason why you should podcast is because it's the most natural. How many feel that? All right. Yeah. A conversation. All right. That's the number one thing of podcasting is figuring out how to communicate well enough to have a really good conversation. And so that's your first reason. It should be your reason to do it all anyway. Anybody find it difficult to do the direct to camera talking? Because I hate it. Right. Like I hate when I have to sit and talk directly into the camera and come up with something. Or I have to script it and try to figure it out. It's so awkward. And you don't have to tell me because I've watched people do it over and over again. Come in here and they're like super charismatic. They got all of the energy, super personable when you're talking to them. And then the moment the red dot starts flashing, they're kind of like, all right, what do you want me to say? And I'm like, say what you told me before we started. Okay. All right. Or you get the people that come in that have watched a ton of Ryan Pineda content. So they do exactly what he does. Anybody, what's up, everybody? It's Ryan Pineda. I'm like, put your hands down, man. That's not how you talk, right? This is easy, right? Podcasting is easy. It's natural. Talk like you would talk to the individual on a normal circumstance. You just happen to have cameras recording you. The worst thing to do is to fake it and then try to keep up with being fake. It's hard, right? Because once you're an imposter and everybody knows you as this individual, you're going to spend the rest of your time trying to be that individual. And you're going to get uncomfortable. You're probably going to burn out. You're going to get tired, and then you're going to get known for the wrong thing. All right? Those individuals exist. All right? We get a lot of people in and out of these offices, a lot of people on these podcasts. Sometimes you can feel it, sometimes you can't, but we usually can tell because they don't last. All right? They tap out at some point. It's intimate. Your podcast should feel like I'm sitting with you having a conversation, even though I'm watching it from across the country. That's how it should feel. All right? So if I'm having a podcast and I'm doing the whole, welcome everybody, it's Justin Berry, Wealthy Creator host, and I'm here with so-and-so. So-and-so, how you doing today? That is not how we would talk if we saw each other in person. So why not do it and have it more intimate? Let's get into it. Let me be vulnerable, right? Let me tell my story. For those that are considering podcasting or those that are new to it, here's one piece of advice I want to give you. Make sure that when you are podcasting, if you are sitting across from an individual as their guest, that you add in your information to that podcast. So many times I'm watching people come in and what they're doing is they go, it's just yes or no. All right. Hey, how you doing today? Hey, what's the number one thing you learned about your business? Right. And they're answering. It's just ask and tell the entire time. Then they go, well, how come you can't clip any of my, well, what do you want me to clip? Your question? How can we cut shorts from that? You didn't give any value to your audience. All of the value came from your guest. And then what tends to happen is that your audience then only comes for the guest. So they never subscribe. They never follow. They never support in any kind of way. They're a fan of who you've had on, not a fan of you. So keep that in mind when you're being intimate. Be sure to add in your elements of the conversation. Even today, there's going to be some people that's like, hey, let's make a piece of content. Let's go out here. Let's film. Do not walk out there with those individuals and make them talk the entire time and you add in just your answer. Tell a story. Add to that element, right? You want it to be a real collaboration between you two. I'm sorry. It's diverse. All right. So looking back, how many saw the Ryan Pineda show before it was The Wealthy Way? Anybody? Okay. If that's you in the comments, just put bad set because that set was terrible upstairs. Right? This is a funny thing about the Ryan Pineda show. When I first started, I came in as an editor at about $3K a month. And my first day of coming in, they handed me a hard drive. It had 10 episodes already recorded on it. And he goes, I need these by Friday. Remember I told you I wasn't like the best editor either. I wasn't like, what I call a shredder now that can go and knock those 10 out in a couple days. I wasn't that guy. All right. I developed to become that guy, but not early on. And so I was like, 10 episodes, how the heck am I going to do this? All right. What did I get myself into? But what I realized is the challenge is what kind of makes you better. Right. And so what happened was I'm going through the episodes. Then there was audio missing. Right. There's lighting missing. And I'm kind of just pointing out everything that was wrong with this to keep me from doing it by Friday. Had to get it done. I did get it done. But what I also noticed while listening is that everything was about real estate. So every conversation was kind of saying the same thing, right? Like, how much money did you make this year? What's your strategy behind what you're doing? Are you a wholesaler, flipper? Like, it's the same conversations, right? And that went on episode after episode after episode. And then one day, Derek Carr walks in, NFL quarterback with the Saints right now. He comes in and he's doing a podcast. And I'm like, oh, okay, this is different. This is going to be cool. They need something different, right? His audience should want something different. We go in there, he films a podcast, we put it out, it bombs. I'm like, bro, this is the quarterback of your city. So I'm like, at least all of Vegas should have watched this, right? No, it didn't happen that way. And what I learned from that is that diversity still needs to be strategized and specific, right? So you can talk about different things with different people. Do not feel that your brand and your podcast has to be solo to one niche. It doesn't. You have to figure out how to get creative and dial in on how to make those niches kind of mix together. All right. So I can have somebody that does real estate sit down with me. I can have an actor. I can have all these different content creators sit down with me. And all I have to do is figure out how can I make this make sense for my audience. I can be diverse. And that's what's natural about it. Don't make the content, be the content. How many of y'all can feel that? All right. Want to know what I mean by that? Making content is me sitting down, scripting, and trying to figure out what piece is going to go viral. That's making content. There are a lot of content creators that do that, right? And I know for me, if I want to go viral right now, I got a whole strip to my, to my making where I can go down there. If I want to just go down there and slap somebody, I can get 1 million views, right? Doesn't mean anything for the business. How would that help Wealthy Creator? How would that help the wealthy world? Doesn't work, right? So rather than me making content, I decided to be the content. And Ryan offered up an opportunity for me to do that. Here's the number 2. It's most efficient. Efficiency, he kind of mentioned it earlier, right? Your processes. How will you create content that makes the most sense for your time, for your business, and for your lifestyle? All right? You got to figure that out because, if you haven't put out content today and your plan is to put out 2 shorts every day for the rest of this year, how you going to do it? All right? Otherwise, you're going to be on your phone all day. You're going to be trying to create all day and your business kind of suffers. All right. So you got to figure that out. It's a low barrier to entry. All right. You heard him say he got 400,000 followers on TikTok from using his phone. Don't feel like you got to go get a whole bunch of equipment. Got to go spend all this money on a set and everything else. Use what you have. Start there. All right. You also don't have to be the expert right now. All right. You're an expert in your own way. Don't get me wrong, but you don't have to be the expert right now that makes everything right, all the right decisions and does everything perfect and makes millions of dollars on their business to have a podcast, right? Because you have a story, right? And if you share your story, that is your podcast. If you share your experiences, and if you share others' experiences, that's your podcast right there. It's convenient. We put out anywhere from 40 to 50 pieces a day on Ryan Pineda Social. That's just Ryan Pineda. Doesn't count for any of the other wealthy brands. How often do you all think Ryan films? Once a month? I wish. He wishes too, probably. He gives me 2 days a week, maybe 4 to 6 hours a day. That first day, that Monday, he comes in, 2 podcasts, knocks them out. That's about 2 hours a piece. And then we film any other assets that we have to create. That second day is only if the first day doesn't get everything done. All right. I can tell you as of yesterday, he filmed his first podcast in 10 days. We're still 2.5 weeks ahead. All right. Efficiency. With that, we're still able to put out that amount of content per day. All right. He wouldn't be able to film, and we've done this, right? He wouldn't be able to consistently film that amount of shorts if he was just doing direct to camera. That burns out really quick. Like watching him come in, knowing that he hates doing it, it's like, all right, we got to figure something else out here, right? But it is very useful for him to sit down and have a conversation with other people of high level, right? It's easier, right? And from that, we create all of the content. Versatility. Again, he gets to talk about whatever topic he wants, right? He talked about being kind of controversial, and he did that recently. Scared me. Because I track our stats every week. We put down our followers. We put down how much we're making on AdSense for every channel, everything that we put out. And for 3 weeks straight, nothing grew. I go, uh-oh. Like the goal for this year, I'm really close to hitting the goal that we wanted at the end of this year. And it just stopped. And Javi came down. Javi's the COO here. You'll hear from him later. He comes down and he goes, hey, man, we probably shouldn't have put that out. And I'm like, no, if it's what he felt, we still put it out. We don't, we'll deal with that part. But yeah, we got to figure something out. We got to figure out how to make this grow. It's up again, so don't be worried, all right? Like we're moving again. But topics, he can talk about what he wants. That controversial topic had nothing to do with real estate, all right? It's just a part of what he feels. It's actually faith-based, and so that's a part of his branding, right? You can talk about other things. SEO, obviously, these podcasts now are searchable. So you have the ability now to put these podcasts out and people can find you, right? It becomes a part of how you are searched by your brand, by your name. That's what it looks like per day. Those are the numbers. 6 on Instagram, 3 on YouTube. Twitter gets 3 to 4. LinkedIn gets 1 to 2. Facebook gets 6 per day. And TikTok gets 6 per day. He does not have to film that much to do that. Again, 2 podcasts a week does it. All right. Can you all agree to do an hour-long podcast twice a week? Do you have 2 hours of time to film? Check your schedule. No one's here that's busy. I mean, Ryan's got 8 or 9 businesses. He's probably working on the 11th one now. Like, if you're busier than him, I'd love to know about it because you have to be doing good. Wealthy Creator Podcast, if you haven't already subscribed. But I'm showing you this because when he offered me the opportunity to host a podcast, I was like, I'm not really that guy, but I'll do it. You know, again, this is that faith part and believing in yourself and understanding that it takes a risk. So I started doing it. I saw my Instagram go from 2,000 to almost 12,000. Right? That was because I'm able now, without making content, to put out something every day. Just from what my conversations on my podcast. Looking at that page, those first 6 are all from a podcast, right? And so that's what is key. I don't have to come in and be like, all right, how do I look? All right, you ready? Is it recording? Here we go, right? I don't have to do that. I literally go, what's your name?
Laurel.
Laura, how you doing, Laura? My name is Justin. It's pleasure. What are you in? What do you do?
Real estate and loans.
All right. Would you mind? Would you sit down with me and do a podcast?
Absolutely.
That's awesome. Just from that little bit of information, I can dial in 4 or 5 questions to ask her about real estate, her business, her content creation. Just that quick. And as we flow, we're going to get into other things. You have kids? Kids are here. That's even better, right? I get to relate, right? Find things to relate on, right? Those are things that you can do very easily today with the people in the room, all right? Some of you all are going back to your homes across the country. It's very easy to hop on a virtual set. All right. Riverside, let's do it. Zoom, let's do it. Let's get this done. Let's have this recording. Let's cut from it. All right. Very easy. Another reason the algorithm favors it. This is a screenshot from 90 days from our YouTube page. 10 million, almost 11 million views, 4,000 watch hours, 27,000 subscribers still going up, and then 40,000 in AdSense. Who take that 40,000 in AdSense? That'll fund some stuff for you, right? But here's what's interesting, right? This all started to increase when he decided to go all in on podcasting. We had hit a kind of a plateau with him doing his home tours and him doing all of the Flip Nation videos that people may have saw when we're highlighting other businesses. We hit a plateau. All right. We start seeing, we're putting in work too, y'all. Like, it's 115 degrees in the summertime and I'm standing on top of his mountain talking about, well, all right, tell us again what you're going to do with this. Right? Like, this is real work. Hours on end of filming a home tour. Right? Big houses, smaller houses, whatever it is, it takes time to do that and then go get it edited. Now everything's stationary. It's on tripods, switched already, right? Like, way less effort put in, but everything's up. It's because the platform started to do the work for us. We didn't have to worry about virality anymore, right? Because the platform is going to push it for us. The moment he goes, all right, we're doing an hour-long podcast, I'm going to try to make it 2, everything went up some more. These are all strategies. These are all things that you test and that you learn, right? You're going to hear strategy from everybody now. How to make a thumbnail, how to make, how you should title, everything. And all that is important. But sometimes you just got to figure out what the platform wants. What are they rewarding, right? And so that's what we did. Another point to be made about why you should be podcasting is building trust. And I touched on it a little bit, but you want to establish that connection, right, with your audience. You're already connecting in the room or online with the person that you're speaking to, but you want to build trust and you want to start to really get that deep connection with your audience. I tell everybody, Ryan's almost trained his audience, right, from the very beginning, right? You expect him to offer you something once he finishes giving you his value, right? That is an expectation from his audience, whether you know it or not, right? There's been some creators come in, and it's funny, I'm not going to name them, but there was one guy came in and he does, he gets thousands, hundreds of thousands, and sometimes millions of views on his YouTube channel. And we're sitting in my office and he goes, man, y'all should be getting a lot more views. And I'm like, yeah, tell me how. All right. I'm curious too. Tell me what we need to do. He goes, well, to be honest, your thumbnails suck, your title suck, the video sucks. All right. And I'm not a prideful guy. So it was like, I kind of just laughed and was like, all right, tell me more, right? Kill me for all you want. And he goes, yeah, man, Ryan's such a great talent. It should be doing way better. And I go, okay, so how do you get views? So he started explaining it to me. And I go, I see you got a link to is this a t-shirt? He's like, yeah. I go, how many have you sold with all these views? Well, they're not really doing that good. I'm like, really? You got 1 million views on this video with a link to a t-shirt? That's $25. You didn't sell, he's like, I sold 12. And you told me I sucked? Right? And it wasn't that I felt that he sucked for real, because his content was good. It's entertaining content. But all that entertaining you're doing is not providing any value to make people support and actually become a fan of yours. Right? They're watching because they need some time to spend, and get past, right? Probably at work or when you're supposed to be watching your kids. Right? That's what they're doing. They're not giving them any value. So no, they're not buying that t-shirt. What good is it? Doesn't do anything for them in their growth, right? We start training your audience, right? Knowing that, right? Giving value, giving testimonials, giving authentic information about yourself, getting vulnerable. And that's how that trust begins to build. You get to showcase your knowledge too, right? Which is great. Because again, what you have up here is already enough. What you've experienced in your life is already enough. You have that ability to share those, right? And as you start to share, you get good at it too, right? Like, I can tell my story better and better every time I tell it, right? Because of the reps that I'm putting in every single time. So get good at that. Again, we're growing a community, right? We got about 80 to 90 people online. That's a community in its own, right? Those individuals decided to wake up today and tap in with us, right? And they're going to continue to do that. You here in the room, you're a community. You're a part of us now, right? You're in this room, right? Figure out how you can support and be a bigger part of a community, whether it's ours or someone else. Just get involved, right? And what that does essentially is your stories begin to extend. You get more to tell, you get more to learn, more to talk about, right? And then you get to expose that to your community online. The last thing about building trust, connect with industry leaders, right? What's fun about the Wealthy Way podcast is that we get to see all kinds of people come in here from every level of expertise. I mean, you'll walk in on a Tuesday and Brandon Turner will be sitting here at the table on his computer. And you're like, what? Like, that's Brandon Turner. What is he doing here? Going back to this. What's most important to you on this page? Watch time. How much time are people spending with us? That's what was most important about this slide. All right. People look at the views. All right. Obviously, people always want to get views. People look at what that revenue said. All right. They want to know. And truthfully, Ryan cares nothing about that revenue. Because the amount of money that he spends on creating this, that doesn't cover it. All right. So that's not important to him. What's important to him is how long people stay. 400,000 watch hours, almost 47 years of watch time consistently. It's a lot, right? Think about that. Son. The 90 days. That's just 90 days. Trust is the most underrated asset in business. Who said it? Anybody know? Action Mosey. It's true. The entire time that you're making content, you should be figuring out, how can I make sure that they trust what I say? How can they believe in me, become a fan of me? What we call a super fan. Kate's going to come up in a little bit and she's going to talk about that process in our steps, right? What we do, short form, long form, super fan, all right? Because that super fan will never leave you. Doesn't matter how you shift your business. Doesn't matter what you do. They're the ones that fight for you when you do something wrong or you get controversial and you still end up wrong. They're the ones like, well, leave him alone. He didn't mean it, right? That's that individual. They're at every event. They're at every workshop online. They're at every challenge. They're there for you. Usually, eventually, they end up within the company, working with you on something, collaborating on your podcast, right? That is that individual. So trust. Make sure that you're building trust with whatever you're doing. Then the last one is collaboration. Understanding that collaboration is one of the biggest keys to what we are trying to do here in terms of how we grow and scale a company. You are collaborating with us in this very moment. We are collaborating with you. Good about a podcast is that the reach extends the more we collaborate. All right. I get to get in front of somebody else's audience and that reach begins to extend, vice versa. Is it favorable in your hand? Is it favorable in theirs? Like, how can you make it good? One thing people always say, man, I don't know how I'm gonna get people on. What do you mean? You know enough people. They don't have to have millions of followers right away, right? If they have value to offer your audience, you should get them on. Doesn't matter what their follower says. I've had people on my podcast that don't even have YouTube pages. I just understand what they've done on their platforms, whether it's Instagram or short, whatever it is, that it can be valuable to my audience. Credibility and authority. Who you stand next to matters. You're only listening to me because I'm standing next to Ryan Pineda. That's the only reason why you're hearing what I'm saying from my experience that I experienced with him, right? So it matters. That collaboration does matter in those terms. Does the person that you have on have something to say? Bless you. Do they have something to offer? Do they have something to say? right? Because yeah, it might be your best friend, but if they got nothing to talk about that is of value to your audience, please don't have them on. Right? You're hurting yourself at that point. And then the networking. Back to that. You're gonna hear that a lot. Networking is the strong point of collaboration, right? Now, we've met today. We've talked. I want you to tell me later, how can I help you in what you're doing? And hopefully you ask me the same thing, right? Because now we can begin to network. Who else do you know? How'd you get here? How'd you find us? But all those questions will lead somewhere, right? To begin to do that. I was terrible at networking early on. I'm gonna be honest. Like, I played ball, but like I was the guy that was like, just leave me alone. I only want to play ball. And so when I realized what I really realized is that, yeah, if you have to get uncomfortable if you want to grow. And so that meant going and talking to people that I would never really approach. And then it's about learning how to approach people. Right? Because I was awkward in moments. I'm telling you, like really awkward in moments, right? Like where the handshake was off. You ever see? Yeah. Come on now. I know y'all done that before. We like go to dap, but it's a handshake and it's weird, right? I've done that plenty of times because of understanding what it really meant to be in that room and understand how to communicate with people. I had to learn that. But I had to learn that by jumping out there and getting the reps in. Learning opportunities, right? One thing Ryan always says is really valuable for him and his podcast is that he gets to sit down with these high-level people and learn from them, all right? And if you give them 2 hours, that's a long time, all right? I know from what I've seen in this industry, it costs a lot to get 2 hours with people, all right? And so people are willing to pay it, but what if I just want to do a podcast with you? It's almost a free consultation. You know what I mean? Like, and it's been plenty of times where I've sat through a podcast of the individual just asking Ryan's questions. I'm like, whose show is this? Right? Like, but that's what they're coming for. They want to learn. Long-term relationships, that credibility, that networking, those learning opportunities lead to some long-term relationships. And now me and you can do business together. We can figure out how to make money together, how to grow our businesses together, right? Because through those relationships. And if you don't know somebody, you're only one person away from the person that I need to meet. So it's important to understand collaboration. How y'all like that? Who's that? Brandon Turner, right there in the studio, right down the hallway. Another one, Andy Elliott. Yes, sir, Andy Elliott. All these guys, Grant, it's a big one. All these guys have been in this studio. I've had the opportunity to listen to them, learn from them, shake their hands. Ryan has had the opportunity to sit with them for hours of conversation. But one thing I've learned by being shoulder to shoulder with him when we're traveling and we're doing other things is that the conversation never ends in the studio. All right? I see his phone go off and he's like, hey. And I'm like, man, this dude's just calling you now. Right? It's super interesting. We were coming from an event in Dallas, right? And we're on a private jet with Bradley and some other creators. And I'm sitting and we're talking. And as we're talking, Ed Milet is texting Ryan. So I look at Ryan like, right, you changing, right? Like, you get your peer group. But it all started with just a podcast. We drove to Ed's house to sit in his living room, set up, and film a podcast. Right? These are experiences. Right? I get to share these experiences in my story now. Right? Part of my podcast is those experiences. You have those experiences. Right? Whether you think it's cool or not, to an individual that's listening, to your audience, it's useful. Just remember, you have to share it. Number one thing to do is just press record. How many of y'all are committed to a podcast today? There's more hands now. Okay. All right. At least you're thinking about it. Y'all lying to me anyway. But just press record. Don't worry about anything else right now. Get started. All right? Because what happened is you go, I'm pressing record. Are you ready to start? We'll go. You'll end it and you look at it like, oh, this was terrible. But then you'll realize, oh, I can find help. I can find help. There'll be opportunity to find the individuals or the resources that I need to get the help that I need. Here's some things that I wrote down. Here's my wordy slide. That's what I'm talking about. I get wordy. All right? Start now so you can develop the ability to communicate effectively. And in doing that, you'll get better and prepared when people are actually listening. Because I'm going to tell you now, you start today, no one's listening. It just is what it is. Don't plan on coming out and being like, and watching your stats every day. All right? I can tell you in all honesty, I haven't looked at my Wealthy Creator YouTube channel to check stats at all. I don't do it. In fact, I hate listening to myself. What we're recording right now, I'm never going to see it. Because truthfully, I don't care about what it is doing now. I care more about what it's going to do for my future. What is it building for later? Do I have your trust? All right. Do you feel like I'm being honest? Is it on brand with what we're trying to do? That's what's important. All right. Whether I get 1,000 views, 20,000 views, or none of my videos do anything, doesn't matter right now. I'm working on how I can communicate my information effectively. All right. So just get started. It says podcasting is a wild, wild west. You heard Ryan say none of us know what we're doing. All right. We're throwing stuff and seeing what's working. And then whatever works, we tell you all about it. That's real strategy. Because I can go tell you what they say about the algorithm. All right. Which I hate that word, by the way. All right. I tell everybody to replace algorithm with audience, and then you'll be better prepared for what you're trying to do. Because even today, if you got 20 people that watches every one of your videos, if they filled this room, you'd feel good about that 20 people. Then you see a video with 250 and you're like, I thought this one was going to do good. Think about a room of 250 people, a room of 1,000 people. You'd feel different if you saw them, right? So don't worry about the platform. Worry more about your audience, and the platform will begin to work for you. But going back to that, we don't know. By next year, this time, it may be something totally different going on these platforms. And we're going to have to figure it out all over again, right? Paying close attention to what those analytics are doing and what they're trying to tell us. That's my point. Every audience has that value. So be sure to understand that, right? Don't take for granted what you've already created. And then don't take for granted what you need to do in the moment to create even more. I hope that, if you weren't podcasting before, that you're considering it now. And again, there's resources out there for you, all right? There's going to be stuff available to help you with that process.